My name is Claire and I am 32 years old. Last Thanksgiving, in front of 19 members of my family, my mother laughed and asked me how it felt to be useless. She had a glass of wine in one hand and a brand new handbag on her arm, and she made sure the whole table was watching when she said it. Here is the part she did not know. 2 days earlier, I had quietly ended a secret I had been keeping for 6 years. When my answer finally came out at that table, my father shot up so fast his chair screeched across the floor, and the question he shouted split my family clean down the middle. My mother's smile did not survive the next 10 seconds. And it was only the beginning. I am a pediatric nurse. Night shift, 9 years. A children's hospital in a city nobody outside my state has heard of. I can start in 4 on a screaming toddler in a moving crib. I know a dozen ways to take a temperature on a child who will not sit still. What I apparently could not do is read my own mother. I lived in a studio apartment with a 2-burner stove and a window that faced a parking lot. My scrubs came from the clearance rack. My car had almost 200,000 miles on it, and a check engine light I had learned to treat like a roommate. Every month, in a folder in my banking app, I kept what I called the front door fund. It was supposed to be a down payment on a small house of my own someday. 6 years of double shifts should have filled it 3 times over. Instead, it stayed shallow, like a bathtub with the drain cracked open. Here is why. On the 1st of every month, at exactly 6 in the morning, money left my account. A big, quiet, automatic bite. I had scheduled it for that hour on purpose, back when I set it up. So I would already be at work, too busy to watch it happen. You do not schedule a payment for a time you cannot witness unless some part of you already suspects you should not be making it. It took me 6 years to hear what that timestamp was telling me. The money went to my mother, Diane. Her rent, her groceries, her car insurance. The entire quiet architecture of her life ran through my checking account. And nobody in my family knew. It started 6 years earlier. 2 years after my parents divorced. She sat me down at her kitchen table one night and cried in a way I had never seen. Your father left me with nothing, she said. I have $11 until Friday. So I loaded a grocery card for her. That was the first domino. A year later her insurance lapsed and I picked it up. Because the thought of her driving uninsured frightened me more than the bill did. Then she found an apartment she loved and could not qualify for on her own. So I signed as her guarantor, and the rent joined the 6 a.m. bite. She had one condition, and she gripped my wrist when she said it. Do not you dare tell your father. Do not you dare shame me in front of this family. This stays between us. I told myself it was dignity. Everyone deserves dignity, and she was my mother. So I kept her secret for 6 years like a good daughter, and never once asked myself why a woman who called herself broke always had somewhere new to put things. To be fair to me, I had 30 years of training. My mother never gave a gift that did not come with a receipt she kept in her head. When I was a child, my grandmother would slip birthday money into my card, and my mother would fold the bills into her own purse on the drive home. For safekeeping, she said, and then, catching my eyes in the rearview mirror, she would smile and deliver the line I grew up inside of. Love keeps score, sweetheart. It always has. She said it the way other mothers said drive safe. I did not think any of it was strange. Fish do not think water is strange. I thought that was simply how mothers talked, how love worked, what daughters were for. Then one September morning, my phone lit up against the window. My mother, texting the word emergency. When I arrived at her apartment, the emergency was a $600 medical bill she waved at me, folded like a fan, and I paid it standing on her welcome mat. As I turned to leave, I noticed a stiff paper shopping bag by the closet, cream tissue blooming out of the top, the kind of bag I had only ever seen at the fancy counters in the mall. My mother slid it behind the coats with her heel, smooth as a dance step, and I told myself I had imagined it. That weekend I drove to see my father, Walter, so he could change my brakes. This is how Walter loves people. He puts your car up on ramps, disappears under it for an hour, and comes out with grease to his elbows and a diagnosis. While he worked, he squinted up at me. You look thin. You sleeping? I work nights, Dad. I sleep in shifts like a submarine crew. He grunted, which is his laugh. Then, wiping a wrench with a rag. Not even looking at me, he said the sentence that started the earthquake. Though neither of us felt it yet. Hard to picture your mother struggling. Your mother is set. I made sure of it when we sold the house. Set. He said it the way you would say a fact about concrete. My mother's version. The one I had been financing for 6 years was $11 until Friday. 2 people I loved were telling me 2 different stories about the same divorce. And both of them believed themselves completely. I opened my mouth to ask what he meant. Then I closed it again, because if I asked, he would ask why I was asking. And the whole thing I had been carrying for 6 years would come down on a Saturday afternoon between the brake pads and the wheel well. So I swallowed the question and drove home. 2 weeks later, my cousin Dana sent me a screenshot at midnight. 3 question marks, then, wait, isn't this your mom? I opened the picture. Turquoise water, a swim-up bar, and my mother in a straw hat, laughing with her whole head thrown back on a catamaran. The caption read, Sister's trip, long overdue. I did the timeline without wanting to. Those 6 days were the exact week, 1 month earlier, when my mother had told me, voice small and brave, that she would be at a cheap church retreat and not to worry about her. I had offered to cover the retreat fee. She had said, you do enough, sweetheart, and I had hung up feeling guilty that she felt guilty. I did not call her. I did not text anyone. I finished my shift. And then I sat down at my kitchen counter at 2 in the morning and opened my own bank statements, 6 years deep, and built a spreadsheet. Because apparently when my life catches fire, I respond with columns. Grocery cards, insurance premiums for years of rent, and a jump in. That rent about a year back that she had explained as a building-wide increase. When the last cell filled in, the total looked back at me. Just over $100,000, pulled from a nurse's paycheck 1 shift at a time, while my own front door fund stayed empty. Here is the part worth understanding clearly, the part that explains everything that came after. A guarantor is not a favor you can simply stop doing. When I signed that lease 4 years earlier, I had legally promised to cover the rent if my mother ever could not. That promise does not end the moment you change your mind about someone. It ends when the lease ends, or when the leasing office formally releases your name from the paperwork. It is a mechanism with a schedule of its own. Indifferent to how betrayed you feel on a Tuesday, I could stop the 6 a.m. transfer whenever I wanted. I could not simply erase my name from a legal document by deciding I was done. Understanding that difference between what I could end today and what I could only begin unwinding today was the first quiet piece of my plan. The second piece came from a leasing office visit I made under the excuse of dropping off a payment. The manager mentioned, cheerfully, how much everyone was loving the upgraded floor plan. The one with the den and the garage. I asked, lightly, when that switch had happened. 14 months ago, she said. That is where the extra came from, about $150 a month. My mother had not been keeping her head above water. She had been adding a den and a garage to her life, and mailing me the bill for it, disguised as inflation, disguised as the world being cruel. I thanked her, walked back to my car, and sat in the parking lot doing the stillest kind of screaming there is. My mother had always demanded one thing above everything else. Silence. Do not you dare tell your father. Do not you dare shame me. So I decided to give her exactly what she asked for. No confrontation. No spreadsheet printed and read aloud. No ambush at a table. Just silence, and inside that silence, one quiet decision. First, I gave her a clean chance. An off-ramp she never had to know was one. I invited her to coffee and told her I was worried about how the money worked, that I wanted to build her a real plan. She stirred her latte, performed a small wounded laugh for the next table, and told me, without my having asked, that her sister had paid for the trip. Then she reached for the sentence I had built my whole childhood around, and handed it back to me as a weapon. Love keeps score. Is that what we are doing now, Bethany? Then, without missing a beat, she mentioned that Christmas was coming and she would need $800 for gifts, unless I wanted her to be the only one with nothing under the tree. I did not say yes. I said, "Let me think about it." The silence that followed told me everything about the price of thinking out loud in that family. I did not stop the groceries that week. I did not stop anything suddenly or visibly. I simply stopped believing the story. And I let that be the only thing that changed at first. I sat down with a hospital social worker on my break and asked her, as a hypothetical that fooled no one, what a woman my mother's age could actually afford on her own. She handed me 3 apartment listings, a financial counselor's card with a session already paid for, and one sentence I have repeated to myself since. You cannot budget someone out of a belief. You can only stop funding the belief. I told my sister everything, the 6 years, the upgrade, the trip, and learned in return that our mother had been quietly borrowing from her too, all while telling each of us the other one never helped. 2 days before Thanksgiving, I removed my name as guarantor on the lease, effective at the end of January. Then I went home, opened my banking app, and looked at the 6A.M. transfer that had run on schedule for 6 years. My thumb hovered over the toggle longer than it has ever hovered over anything, and I have pushed buttons with lives on the other end of them. Then I switched it from green to gray. 9 silent days later, I sat at a table set for 19 and watched my mother arrive 40 minutes late. Camel coat, fresh blowout, the same cream and gold bag riding her forearm like a trophy. She worked the room, gathering her audience the way she gathered everything. And when a cousin asked about my new house, she seized the opening she had been saving. She laughed, loud and aimed, and looked at me the way you look at something you already own. How does it feel to be useless, daughter? 19 people went quiet. I set my napkin down beside my plate. I looked at her, really looked at the blowout and the bag, and the shine in her eyes that I had personally financed for 6 years. And I answered her, level and almost kind. Feels great. Since I just stopped paying your rent. The words landed in the middle of the table like something dropped from a height. My mother's smile did not fall right away. It froze there a half second past its expiration, which is somehow worse than falling at all. Then it slid off completely, and what was left underneath was arithmetic. Down the table I heard my father's chair scrape the floor as he stood straight up. Rent, he said. What rent? And the table went silent in that impossible way, where 17 other people all stop existing at once. Because the trap had not only caught her, it had caught the second lie she had been telling. The one my father never knew he was inside of either. My mother looked from me to my father, and did something I had never once seen her do in front of family. She hesitated. Bethany pays my rent, she said finally, choosing the tone of a woman explaining something tedious to staff. Children help their mothers, Walter. My father did not sit back down. How long, he said. It was not really a question the second time either. So I told him. No spreadsheet, no raised voice, just the facts laid out plain, like instruments on a tray. 6 years. Groceries, then insurance, then rent. The upgrade to the bigger unit. The 6 days in Aruba, she told me, was a church retreat. He gripped the back of his chair until it complained under his hand, then turned to her, his voice low and cracked. Lorraine, I gave you everything from the sale of that house, so our girls would never have to carry you. Where did it go? For a moment she sat perfectly still. Then the tears arrived, right on schedule, glistening for the room. I am your mother, she said, wheeling on me. I gave you life. You owe me. Then she stood, pressed both hands flat on the tablecloth, and played the only card she had left. Choose, Bethany. Walk out that door and you are no daughter of mine. Not at Christmas. Not at my funeral. Not ever. I stood too. The counselor's appointment is paid for, I told her. The apartment list is on your table. That offer does not expire. You can have my Sundays. You cannot have my paycheck. I picked up my coat and left the way I had learned to do everything in that family, quietly, and pulled the door shut behind me soft as a decimal point. What December proved was simple. The rent got paid on time anyway, from money that had apparently been there the whole time. My mother did not renew the lease. She moved into a one-bedroom she could actually afford on her own terms, and told everyone at church she had chosen to simplify because possessions are a prison. The bag stayed. The excuse did not. She attended exactly one session with the counselor I had already paid for, and never went back. She did not transform. People mostly do not. She adapted magnificently, unbeatably, and kept her ledger open on someone else's page. Never again on mine. I closed on my own small yellow house that February, with a crooked mailbox my niece and nephew repainted on purpose. Dead serious that it should stay crooked, because it looks like it is waving. My father showed up the first Saturday with his toolbox and rebuilt the porch steps without being asked, and every board was love measured twice. This Thanksgiving happened at my table instead, with a folding chair that did not match and nobody minding, and a homemade sign on my refrigerator in a child's crooked capitals that reads, "No one owes anyone, everyone brings a dish." If this reminded you of your own 6 a.m. autopay, the one you scheduled early so you would never have to watch it leave, you already know the ending you are waiting for. You do not need a spreadsheet and you do not need an audience. You only need to stop funding the belief and let the silence tell you who is never keeping score at all. If you want to see what happens when a workplace tries the same trick on someone who reads contracts for a living, that story is coming next.